Javi was very interested and passionate about his sneakers. He loved sneakers. He looked at sneakers, talked about sneakers, traded sneakers, enjoyed sneakers. I think there was architecture to them that he enjoyed. And in our Western literature class, we did a whole section on what is beauty and how do we construct the meaning of beauty. And he actually wrote an essay on that. And he really thought about his sneakers as beautiful. Javi, as a student, was very involved in the mission of our school, which is a sustainable lifestyle, which is why he brought so much of that back into his neighborhood, back to his culture, and back to his family. There were science projects where our students go out into the woods and measure trees and really hands-on work with what's going on in the science department. And you could always see him in his white t-shirt, or his hoodie somewhere outside doing the work that had to be done. He was planting trees. They were very important to him. He talked about trees and the importance of trees. He really saw common ground as part of his identity. He really, believed in the mission of the school. He was in my class called Western Literature. And that is a course that begins with this essential question: where do we go when we die? And what we're doing is going back to the ancient Sumerians, and we start with Gilgamesh and Enkidu and probe, what is mortality, and look at, what does it mean to become human? He didn't speak a whole lot, but when he did, it was after a lot of thinking. So I used to say to him, you're going to have trouble in life because you're a philosopher, and there's no money in that. And he would just laugh at me. In that class, Where Do We Go When We Die, we look at fate and free will. Are we as humans fated to be who we are? Or do we have free will? And Javi was adamant. He never changed his mind. Most students do. That we are fated. And he told me he felt that because he was born in New Haven, he was fated to lead a violent life. And I said, Javi, you have some choices in that. And he said, well, I really think we're fated. I don't think we have free will. And I think where we're born is where we die. I received a phone call, and I got the news from my boss that he was dead. And I said, what happened? And she told me that he had been killed in the early morning hours. She didn't know much more. I immediately started texting some of his friends to call me. If they were available, I certainly didn't want to leave a voice message, And I did get a hold of 2 or 3 of his friends and told them. Then I started hearing, information starts dribbling in from multiple sources. And I started hearing that he was shot in the back. He was found without his sneakers on his feet. He had been running away when it happened. People knew who it was, but they weren't going to snitch. The police knew who it was. The police didn't know who it was. I've always had a pet peeve as a teacher with teenagers. There's this moral code about don't snitch. And I always say to them, if you're telling something to get yourself out of trouble, that's snitching. If you're telling something to make it right, that's the right thing to do. And I would always have this moral high horse and say this to all of them. And, one day, a whole group of seniors, we were talking about Javi and what had happened. And I said, but if you know what happened, you have to come forth. If you have any idea who could have done this. And they said, Miss, we can't snitch. And I blew up, and here we go again with the snitching. And they said, you don't understand. You're not living our lives. You're not living in New Haven. If I tell on someone, other people get hurt. Not me. I'm protecting other people. I don't know what's going to happen if I tell. Yeah, eventually I'll get hurt. And at that point, they were really slowly, sadly shaking their heads going, Miss, we love you, but you just don't get it. You don't get what you're asking people to do when you tell us to snitch. The other day, a student said to me, "Do you know what I'm really sick and tired of, miss?" And I said, "What's that, honey?" "I'm sick and tired of adults telling me, 'Hey, everything's a mess. You better get smart and fix it.'" She goes, "I'm just a kid. I need help here. But everybody's telling us we have to fix everything. We have to fix a planet or we're not going to have one. We have to end violence or it's going to get worse. We have to make sure." She goes, "I'm just a kid. I don't know what we're supposed to do." And so there's this sort of line of telling them, we don't want you to just sit back and accept the violence. But the violence is coming from so many different areas now that even the adults can't keep up with it. How do you keep up with the forms of violence that are coming at us that lead to this ultimate violence where someone loses a life? I don't want them to accept it. But isn't that what they're seeing adults do? Accept it, build more prisons, you know? Where are the teen centers? Where is the community building that needs to be done by adults for them? Because they don't have the resources. And, you know, quite honestly, I think the adults need to step it up. I really do. Javi was doing something with what he was learning. He was thinking about fate and free will, and he was starting to speak to his friends, and he was even asking them, "What do you think it means to be born in New Haven? Do you think that means what they say, that X amount of, young people will be dead by the time they're 25? Am I fated to be dead?" So, how do we make sense of this data? If we're giving kids these numbers, don't you think they worry about if they're the number on this side or that side? If you are fated to live in an area that is deemed violent, what choices can you make? So, in other words, if you're born in a violent neighborhood and that's your fate, what if we change that neighborhood and make it less violent? And now when you're born into a nice neighborhood. The seniors decided that the best way to commemorate Javi's life and his death was to plant a tree, something that he had been doing and loving to do, on the spot where he was murdered. His family is completely devastated, and they felt that some of these actions might help heal the family, might give them a sense of he's still here in spirit, he's not gone, it was too sudden. So getting together, holding hands, singing, planting the Javi tree, having the family there, it was really a lovely event. I think the way our school responded shows the maturity and the integrity that teenagers have and the kind of respectful and meaningful relationship they can have with adults. They did not seal themselves off. They did not shut others out. This was a place where we opened up. And when our students said, "This needs to stop," they took time to think about what that meant, and they're still thinking about it. So it's been an ongoing celebration and sort of an ongoing healing, and a recognition that New Haven lost somebody who really cared about New Haven. That's why he was planting trees. If that's not hope, I don't know what is. Regardless of what he thought his fate might be, he was hoping for a better fate for others.